Hello my friends, I have a short story for you. It's set in Belfast and it's called Corners. Professor Denis had been very worried about his wife. Coming to Belfast was fine for him, interest in work of worth, prestige among colleagues and a good 5-year contract likely to be renewed on even better terms. But Sadat was not happy at all. She had no friends, felt vulnerable, even despised, missed her family in Egypt, the heat, and the wonderful sense of history in their native city of Luxor. She tried to hide it out of deep respect for a wonderful husband who she loved very much. But even though getting the research project up and running had taken him far too much of his time, he knew how she was feeling. Yet in the last few weeks it had all changed. He didn't know why, but Sadat was brighter, happier, settled, like her old self again. And as a result, the 2 children were joyful as well. All she would say was that she would show him something special in the Botanic Gardens when he took his first Saturday off since they'd arrived. As they walked through the gates, she, a respectful few paces behind, pointed him in the direction that she wanted to go toward the hothouses. The children suddenly ran ahead shouting, "Irish Jada!" and were soon hugging an elderly lady in her 70s sitting on a park bench. Sadat looked at his wife for an explanation. The sun on her face illuminated her smile. "This is my dear friend Pauline. It is she who has made me glad that I live in Belfast, Sadat." The professor was confused, but took the outstretched hand of the lady, and the firmness of the handshake added to his surprise. "I'm pleased to meet you, sir. Your wife has told me all about you. She's so proud of you." Sadat Shanudu wondered what had been going on all these Saturdays when he'd been working and his wife and children had been here in Belfast's beautiful Botanic Gardens. It had all started in the spring when the flower beds and the park's glorious trees had all been full of new colour and life. Pauline Mitchell loved the park, and it always set her memories in motion, from childhood into her courting days, while she still treasured the photograph they'd asked the gardener to take of them together in 1955. How classy that old black and white picture looked now. This day Pauline was sitting in the sun in the very same spot in front of the ornate Victorian hothouse when she had first seen the little family, a gracious mother wearing a beautiful brown hijab that seemed to make her eyes glisten like jewels. Pauline watched her as the children, a little girl of about 3 and a boy of perhaps 2, played close to her as she sat on the next bench. Pauline tried to make eye contact with the mother, but she couldn't. She seemed unsure of herself, nervous, perhaps even a little sad. Pauline thought back to her move to London when her husband John had been promoted. At first she'd loved London, so busy and interesting, so much to do, so much to see, and her job at the travel agents had been very interesting too. But then everything changed. Pauline had never been a political creature, and though John had his opinions about Irish unity, he wasn't extreme. But the Irish Republican Army campaign had begun, and regardless of rights and wrongs, bombs in England produced feelings against the Irish community, and all the more so toward those with a Northern Irish accent. In the past she tried to ignore the signs on pubs and restaurants common in those days in England: no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. She actually felt happier to be in company with decent black folk and nice dogs than to be approved by those who would post such nasty signs. But now it was worse. People who didn't know her well had treated her with suspicion. They didn't want her to get close. She hadn't a violent thought in her head or her heart, yet she was treated as if she was a bomber. The policewoman she asked for directions was very rude. A shop she'd used often on her way to work had a different atmosphere. The staff taking her money but not wanting any conversation at all. The manager at the travel agents, who'd always been good to her, now made disparaging comments about the Irish, often making sure she heard them. She tried to return a skirt that she thought was a little short to a shop near her home in Slough, but the owner told her, "If you don't like what we sell, clear off back to Ireland." True, her neighbours next door were the same as ever, but life in England now made her feel vulnerable, insecure, afraid. She didn't leave, returning home to Antrim only after John had died, because them having had no family, she wanted to be near to her nephews and nieces. So, she was thinking, in view of 9/11 and events in Europe too, is this poor Asian lady feeling just like I did then? The next week, the family arrived in Botanic Gardens again. The little boy dropped his ball and it rolled to Pauline's feet. She picked it up and held it out to him, and he returned her smile. What a handsome child, she thought. And the mother's eyes met hers for a second, but then dropped to the ground. Pauline had to go. She needed to catch the 5:14 train back to Antrim because her favourite niece, Magella, was calling with her husband, Michael. They were up from Dublin just for the weekend. They'd recently become Jehovah's Witnesses, and open-minded Pauline had a host of questions she wanted to ask them as they enjoyed the meal she prepared for them. She loved them much. The next Saturday it rained hard, and though she sat in the park under a bright red umbrella, the family didn't arrive, and Pauline was sorry about that. The next week, though, the late spring sunshine was warm on her face as they approached. The children's eyes and lips flashed smiles at her, and she basked in them. She reached into her handbag and took out a bar of chocolate, asking the mother's permission to give some to the children. Nervously, the beautiful young mother said, "Thank you," and she managed a smile. At first, conversation was hard. For Pauline, it was like trying to wring water out of a nearly dry cloth. But in the end, for the last 10 minutes, that afternoon, the Asian lady had begun to relax with her. The following Saturday, the mother looked happy to see her, and she sat down on the same bench. Her name, she said, was Sadat, and the little girl was Naz. Adil was the young boy. Her husband was a heart doctor, a heart specialist, and he'd come to work at the university hospital as part of a research team that hoped to be able to save lives all over the world. They'd been in Ireland for just 3 months, and they had an apartment in the Botanic area. She missed her family and friends, her home city Luxor. She laughed. "And I miss the heat." Pauline did much listening and shared some of herself too. She had a bar of chocolate for the children as well. When she had to go, the children gave her a gentle hug, and Sadat said, "We will see you next week." The friendship blossomed like fruit trees through the summer, and by autumn they were also meeting on Wednesday afternoon to shop and enjoy coffee together. In mid-September, the children were calling Pauline their Irish Yada, Irish grandmother. They were so close that neither Pauline or Sadat could imagine life without the joy of each other's friendship. As Sadat now told her husband the story, he listened with a very serious face, and Pauline was afraid she might face his disappointment, his disapproval. But when she'd finished, he started to laugh loudly. "Ha ha, Pauline," he said, with the most beautiful accent. "I have been so worried about my dear wife, and suddenly she changed. I have you to thank. And I hope that I too can be blessed with the friendship of such a gracious lady. But may I ask you, please, why did you..." He did not seem to know how to finish the sentence. "Oh, that was easy," Pauline said, as the children clung to her. "I knew that your wife and I were just different corners of the same smile." That's the story, my friends. The world's full of division and hatred and prejudice, and people group folk together and think they're all this or they're all that. It's good to be open-minded, isn't it? And get to know people, and show love and kindness everywhere we can. I certainly hope everybody shows love and kindness to you. Just wanted to share that little story with you, my friends. Bye for now. Bye-bye.